Hi, Carol.
Did it work? Yes.
Well, I'm here with Carl.
I'm here with Carl.
And Carl, can you please tell our viewers who you are, my brother?
Carl, can you please tell our viewers who you are, my brother?
I'm delighted.
And
So, who am I? I'm a psychiatrist, an old psychiatrist who is wearing a clown nose and a tank top here and very hot.
you're not wearing your clown nose, my brother.
Can you not wear your clown nose, my brother?
You please wear it.
Yay!
I did not want to impugn my credibility by immediately appearing in my clone persona and tell you, well, at least just historically, I told you I'm a psychiatrist, a community psychiatrist, something that is no longer a specialty in psychiatry, but someone who believed that the nature of human behavior was not solely determined by the intrapsychic determinants of behavior, but, you know, there were things like poverty and disenfranchisement and economics that impacted the nature of the human experience. And we had to address those in addition to whatever you might have experienced with your parents and the traumas that all of us to some extent experience and get through. And we need to pay attention to the bigger picture. I spent most of my professional life working with Native Americans, which very much informed how it is that I see the nature of the psychotherapeutic process. I came to Indian country to actually abrogate my military obligation, not wanting to go to Southeast Asia. And that's where I learned how many ways there are to touch people, to heal people. And that what it meant as a psychiatrist, how it is that somebody who has not shared a similar cultural life experience and comes with a certain expectation based on a history of 150 years of neocolonialism and somehow expected people were going to talk to me and say anything that was meaningful, they could trust, and you had to find another way to communicate.
Yeah. Maybe you said this, but you're calling from Arizona.
And Carl, maybe you said this, but you're calling from Arizona?
I am. I'm calling from Arizona. This is where I came in 1970 for many years.
Wow.
Chief of psychiatry at the Phoenix Indian Hospital.
50 years.
50 years.
Well, not 50 years working at the Indian Hospital, 20 years there, and then moved out to talk to people who would listen, who were not defined as mentally ill or had a problem. You know, it's a limited view of psychiatry. I wanted to help people be able to help themselves face whatever they're facing without having to be diagnosably mentally ill in order to somehow find ways to deal with whatever it is that they're facing.
Carl, you've written about 6 books. Can you share the titles of some of your favorites?
Carl, you've written about 6 books. Can you share the titles of some of your favorites?
My first book, The Dancing Healer, tells a story about a white boy from New York, comes into Indian country, and what he learned about what he thought he learned in medical school, and learned what it really meant to be healthy. I never learned that in medical school. Health was never defined. To be healthy was a diagnosis of exclusion. If you weren't sick, you were healthy. It's an illness-based model. In Indian country, what it meant to be healthy was when what you knew with your head and what you said with your lips and by your actions and what you felt in your heart were all telling the same story. In the Navajo tradition, this is called hojo, the word for health. Hojo is the same word as the word for truth, balance, harmony, beauty, and the Great Spirit. What a wonderful concept, that if you are in truth, you are in balance, and then you are healthy. We live in a culture in which the telling of truth has become an archaic myth of yesteryear. We live in a culture at the present time in which whatever you say can't be believed. We live in a time in which news is said to be fake if you don't agree with it, and you can find somebody else who's going to corroborate your viewpoint. In
And
short,
that's I meant you as you are the truth fairy
And that's how I met you, as you are the truth fairy
that's
at
true.
Oregon Country Fair,
at Oregon Country Fair,
where you got to do.
wearing a tutu.
And a clown nose and a wig.
Yeah.
And it's my attempt to be able to deal with what I'm describing as this overwhelming bullshit that is drowning us, in which nobody knows who's telling the truth, and people become dispirited. So we need to find some way to make a connection, to talk to people in this way, this truthful way. We live in a country in which, as I say, the truth has become subordinated to the expedient. What's right and wrong in this country is defined by what it is you can get away with. That's hardly an ethic of morality that's going to sustain us. In any event, the Truth Fairy was an attempt at Country Fair, where I have spoken for many years and appeared with my friend Patch Adams, whom you also know and have honored in many ways. And spend 5 minutes with people to talk to the Truth Fairy. They had no idea who I was, what I did, whether I was a psychiatrist, but you had 5 minutes to talk about anything you wanted to. I mean, to ask or to say something that you wouldn't ordinarily take the risk, and have a chance to hear somebody respond to you truthfully. And it was an extraordinary experience. You know, people would share intimate details, even though they had no idea who you are, knowing that it would not be shared, repeated, filmed. It was just between us. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than it is to talk to somebody that you know, even know well. And being able to tell one's truth and to know that it will be heard as it's intended, that it will not be abused in any way, and somebody's going to respond from some truthful, intuitive level, can be very helpful. And that model is something that we have tried to introduce in a project that I'm involved with now called the Healing Corps, in which we train people in humanitarian clowning principles, how to connect in a short period of time. It has nothing to do with the costume, it has nothing to do with the nose, and it's not a performance. We are humanitarian clowns. We present ourselves in some open-hearted way, a way in which we get out of our head and to come from this heart place that says, look at me, here I am, in my most open-hearted, non-judgmental self, and willing to listen from this place. Healing, getting better, is about being involved in relationships. The critical element for getting well is a belief in the practice and a belief in the practitioner. If you like the person, if you can develop a relationship with them, it has some impact, believable impact. And we train people to make those kinds of heartfelt connections in a short period of time. In contemporary American healthcare, and especially in psychiatry and mental health, we don't have a lot of time. It's become medication focused, diagnosis focused, disease focused. Give it a name, give it a number. The implication is you know something about it. But having a heartfelt relationship, to talk to somebody from this place and know that you will be heard, is a critical element in getting better.
Carol, I was asking you earlier about your books. Can you share a few more titles?
Carl, I was asking you earlier about your books. Can you share a few more titles?
Okay, so I told you about the Dancing Healers, this transitional journey from doctor to healer, what I learned about how people get sick and how they get well. The next book was entitled The Theft of the Spirit. And it talked about the fact that we don't have to come to Indian country to kind of practice this, that we had to get in touch ourselves, to be willing to reach down inside and allow our spirit to talk to us, you know, that inner piece of ourselves, that ineffable quality within that propels us forward. And that we allow the human spirit to be stolen, or at least covered with all kinds of lampshades. We steal people's spirit. We cover it up. We tend to lose it. And we need to find ways to kindle that spirit, to be willing to reach down inside, look at the light, take off the lampshades of fear and doubt, and be able to deal with whatever it is you're facing, and how you can do that. I wrote a book on healing ceremonies, creating personal rituals of healing, and talks about how dramatically we underutilize ritual and ceremony in contemporary medical life. You know, it's soft marshmallow and fluff and make-believe. But rituals and ceremonies provide the structure that allow people to get in touch with feelings. So if you use feathers or smudge or smoke, you create a space in which something is going to happen that people know is going to set the stage that allows them to go inside, to reach down inside, be able to touch the essence of their truth, and take some risks about facing those and moving beyond the limitations. I have another book that's called Stop Your Shit Shoveling. And it's a little paperback, little handbook about how it is that sometimes we talk about things thinking that somehow just talking about changes it. And it doesn't. You know, you have to be willing to do something about it. Most people just want to talk. So they move their shit from one pile to another. They don't change it. Therapy is about stopping the shoveling and actually taking action. Most of us just want to talk about it, we don't want to do it. And we can always find more reasons not to take the risk to do it, knowing even what we have to do, because there are always more reasons to maintain the status quo and to justify staying where we are than there are reasons to take the risk, to make leaps of faith and to move beyond whatever your limitations are. And if you're looking for a reason not to do something, there are always more of those than there are reasons to take the risk to make those leaps of faith.
Carol, you and I met in a magical moment for me was at the community village.
Carl, you and I met at a magical moment for me. It was at the community village.
You talk about nobility of madness.
You talk about nobility of madness.
And I love the phrase as a psychiatric survivor.
And I love the phrase as a psychiatric survivor.
Mad pride.
Mad pride.
And I was surprised that some of my fellow psych survivors say they don't have mad pride.
And I was surprised that some of my fellow psych survivors say that they don't have mad pride.
So a few said, I'm not mad, I'm normal.
A few said, I'm not mad, I'm normal.
I'm angry,
I'm angry,
but I'm not crazy.
but I'm not crazy.
What do you, how do I respond?
How do I respond?
You know, there are two definitions of madness, right? You can be mad, you can be PO'd, you can be angry at something, you're really mad. But otherwise, you're mad, the euphemism that says you're out of your mind, right? You are crazy. You are not all together. And I think that all of us are sometimes not all together. But that doesn't mean that we're mad. It means that we see things, feel things, and act in ways that sometimes may not make sense to a whole lot of people, but is our way of somehow confronting whatever the internal struggles are that we face in a way that allows us to deal with them. I think over the years, you know, the clown with whom I identify, the fool, the jester, has been someone who was always seen as a little mad. They could get away with things that ordinary people couldn't get away with. They saw things from a unique perspective. It is the archetype of the clown, a universal character in the human unconscious, to help us look at the landscape with new eyes. And in that sense, we need to be paying attention to what it is that the mad are seeing, because they allow us to look at the familiar with new eyes. And there's a certain nobility in that. To be able to somehow express oneself in a way that allows you to be heard, that might allow you to also say it in a different way. In Indian country, the clown is sacred. It is a noble character because it has a direct ear. The clown has a direct ear to the creative source. It can get away with things that ordinary people cannot get away with. They can say things, they can do things, they diffuse anxiety, they help us see what is possible. They can say the emperor has no clothes and get us to look at that from their perspective as well. And I think that for those of us who have been diagnosed with a mental illness, that it's often simply a manifestation of being able to say something that otherwise you could not say more directly. And if we can find more ways to do that, then we can find ways to touch each other in ways that allow us to connect, that emphasize our shared humanity. There is a nobility in that. Unfortunately, in contemporary mental health and psychiatry, you know, we make people fit into a paradigm of our preconception. You know, you have this and this symptom, you get this and this diagnosis, and you carry it with you forever. But, you know, we all know that psychiatric illness is different than a medical disease. We don't know what the etiology is. By and large, people exposed to the same kinds of things don't always go mad, whatever that means. We don't quite know how to treat it. The essence of disease is being able to define its pathogenesis, what causes it, how you treat it, what the nature of the outcomes are. That's not true in psychiatric illness. We need to listen to people who are mad and be able to understand the language they are speaking and be able to respond similarly, using metaphors and examples and understanding that they don't have to fit into our preconceptions and judgments about what they have, but rather that we understand where they're coming from, the language they are using, and letting them have an opportunity to share their story while also listening to somebody else's perspective as to how else that story can be told, using language they understand, not just medication and lockup.
Carl, our group, Mind Freedom Oregon here in Eugene.
Carl, our group, Mind Freedom Oregon here in Eugene.
We would like July, the whole month of July, to be Mad Pride Month.
We would like the whole month of July to be Mad Pride Month.
Would you like to support that?
Would you like to support that?
I think having pride in who you are is critically important to living effectively. But mad is not all you are, right? You were a young man, you were hospitalized, you were at Harvard, they knew how bright you were. Your manifestations at that time got you a diagnosis and made it seem as if that's what you are, right? That you are schizophrenic, or that you could be bipolar, or that you could be a borderline patient with, you know, once you get stuck into the system, you become defined by it. I think, you know, that's horrific. Mad pride means what I am is who I am, and in all of the manifestations. I don't intentionally cause harm. I would never hurt anybody. I believe I have a sense of ethics and morality. I am a man or a woman who is presenting him or herself in a way that is my truth, and not at anybody else's expense. And part of my truth is that I sometimes can explore the edge of what seems sane. But that's not all you are, right? You were on the edge, and now you've been a pioneer all over the world in allowing people who've been diagnosed, shelved, judged, and permanently somehow sequestered in some mad definition to liberate themselves and to say the essence of my truth is not my madness. It's only part of my humanity. And it's a part that's allowed me to make contributions, to see the world from a unique perspective, to touch other people and inspire them. That's a real gift. And I think we ought to do it every month. And that you help people stand. And I admire and, you know, respect you for all that you have done to make that happen.
Carl, I think what our folks, everybody wants to know
Carl, I think what everybody wants to know
is because of COVID, climate crisis, Trump,
is because of COVID, climate crisis, and Trump,
etc.
etc.
How do we rejuvenate?
How do we rejuvenate?
How do we have regenerative culture?
How do we have regenerative culture?
Well, you know, I may be peculiar, but I'm thinking there is a hopefulness in what I am seeing here at this moment. I see people coming together, standing together, sacrificing their bodies together in a way that I have not seen before. I think that young people understand what the abuses of power are and are not willing to put up with it. I see an entire generation now who reject the escalating economic divide, the inequality of opportunity, and especially the promises that are not fulfilled in a culture that cannot be believed. I think that there is a hopeful sense that somehow we're not going to put up with it anymore. I think that there is movement in that direction. On the other hand, my greatest fear is that Trump will manifest a strong belief in the alt-right movement, and under the guise of nationalism and protectionism, that there really is a tolerance of racism, intolerance, and that the sides are being more harshly drawn. Even if he loses the election, he speaks for a percentage of the American people.
Surprising.
Is mobilizing that. And that's why we have to get together as a strong force now to both own, you know, systemic racism, institutional racism, as well as our own personal kinds of perspectives. And I think we're doing that now. And the
Like, I agree, there's hopefulness.
Carl, I agree there's hopefulness.
Black Lives Matter is struck at white supremacy.
Black Lives Matter has struck at white supremacy.
You've been a ally for Native peoples.
You've been an ally for Native peoples.
What can you tell us about the wisdom you've received there?
What can you tell us about the wisdom you've received there
Indigenous cultures.
from indigenous cultures?
well, let me say first, it's clear all lives matter. All lives matter. But it's also become clear just in the last weeks that Americans are willing to stand up and say, if you live as a Black person in America, you live a life that's more dangerous. It's just more dangerous. And are willing to stand up and acknowledge it. People of color, people who speak with an accent, that it's simply more dangerous. If a cop car flashes its lights behind me and the siren goes off and I'm motioned to the side, I'm thinking, was I speeding? What did I do wrong? Can I talk myself out of a ticket? A Black man in America sees flashing lights, gets pulled over to the side. He's got to be thinking about life or death. How it is that somehow the abuse of power could result in the imminence of my mortality. I think more people are standing up and saying, I understand the disparity and I am willing to stand and say so. That's my hope. In Indian country, the most important wisdom I have shared with you about how it is we stay healthy and in balance. And the idea, for me, that, I'm trained in a scientific, technological way. I am a scientist. I believe there's an explanation for everything. And that, our inability to answer the questions is simply our inability to articulate them well, but that by and large, everything could be answerable. In Indian country, I learned that what it is we know in our heads is not the only way to see the world. And that the really important questions, they don't just have one answer. I mean, the really important existential questions. What are we doing here? The purpose and the meaning of our lives. And if there's no one way of answering that, then no one way is better than any other way. And we need to be open to listening not only to the voice in our head, but to this internal, intuitive voice, that voice within, that for 150 years of scientism, we have somehow relegated to short shrift. That what you feel is less important than what you know, and pay attention to the facts. And what I learned was that the heart knows things that the mind has never thought about. Because the heart is not yet crippled with judgment and self-doubt. We need to find more ways to connect at this level. Clowning has been for me a vehicle by which I do that. But the sacred clown and the importance of that figure in Indian country was how I became involved in somehow expressing this part of myself and being willing to reach down inside and to say, here I am, not 6'6", not with academic degrees and Ivy pedigree, but a clown in a pink tutu with a flamingo headdress or a truth fairy wig. And it somehow allows us not to connect like this, but to connect at this level, that you can see not just this me, but this me. And I think it's critically important in contemporary life now that we find both people and beliefs that we truly believe in.
Carl, the Oregon Country Fair Community Village will meet by internet this year.
Carl, the Oregon Country Fair Community Village will meet by internet this year.
So we are sharing our interview with Community Village.
So we are sharing our interview with Community Village.
What message would you like to tell folks?
What message would you like to tell folks?
Well, I'm delighted to be with you again in the Community Village. I mean, it's been part of our shared lives together. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to continue to be with you even in these days of isolation. What is the message? Listen, all of us are going to face events that are trying to us. Success in life has nothing to do with, being dealt great cards. It's about learning how to play a poor hand well. To some extent, we all get dealt a hand we may not especially like, but we have to play it. The critical element to success in our lives is not the things that happen to us, not the events, but the choices we make about how we come to those events. It's not the events, but the choices we make about how we come to them that determines our survival, indeed, our thrival in life. And you are living testimony to that idea. You've had some astounding events, from early madness to the paralysis, to Maurice Strumpel, you've had some enormous challenges. And look how you have come to it. It's you who have it, not it that has you. And that is probably the greatest wisdom that I learned. You got it, it doesn't have you. How are you going to choose to come to it? And the many ways there are to make those choices.
One thing, Carl, is thank you.
One thing, Carl, is thank you.
Because for me, that's what I need help on.
Because that's what I need help
I
on.
would be thanking folks like you for millionaires.
I would be thanking folks like you for a million years.
Or you're Jillian, part of my home care team.
Or Jillian, part of my home care team.
Or Deborah.
Or Deborah.
Or all the folks, all our relations.
Or all the folks and all our relations.
That's why I named what I do Achu.
And that's why I named what I do Achu.
Means thanks in Lithuanian.
It means thanks in Lithuanian.
And I am just thankful, my friend.
And I'm just thankful, my friend.
My brother, I appreciate this interview.
My brother, and I appreciate this interview.
Soon I'll be talking with our friend Patch Adams.
Soon I'll be talking with our friend Patch Adams.
Do you want me to give a message to Patch?
Hey, do you want me to give a message to Patch?
Tell him that, like you, he has been a source of inspiration and liberation for me, and that clowns rule, and that laughter and humor is the secret to living effectively, and that I send to you my love, my brother. You have been a source of inspiration to many as well. And in each other's eyes, we see those pieces of ourselves we like the best.
I send my love to you, Carl.
I send my love to you, Carl.
Thanks much.
Thanks much.
To all of you, at Achu and Mind Freedom, my love and blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, thanks much for this.
Carl, thanks much for this.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.